Today we have the pleasure of talking to Miss Molly Barker, the founder of Girls on the Run International, which is a nonprofit that empowers girls to build their confidence and decision-making skills through running and other physical activities. She founded this organization in 1996 with a total of 13 girls in Charlotte, North Carolina, and has built this nonprofit from the ground up with over 200,000 girls and 12,000 locations all across North America. So we can start with the first question. So can you share a little bit about yourself and your journey in founding Girls on the Run?
Sure. My name is Molly Barker, and I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. Grew up here. This is in the southern United States. And I was a runner as a young kid. And somewhere around the age of 15, started to struggle with some feelings of self-esteem and self-worth and may have strayed a little bit. So when I got myself back on track, I thought, wouldn't it be cool to start a program that integrates my love for joyful movement, which would be running, with life skills to empower young women.
Perfect, perfect. What has motivated you to start this organization and how has it evolved?
I was definitely one of the motivations, I think. Well, I started to get a real desire to make a change in the world. I had that even as a little kid, and there's a lot of studies that show that youth who have an interest in making the world a better place, if given the skill sets and the tools, often end up having careers that do that. So I was always interested, especially in um, creating spaces for girls and women where they could thrive. So started a club in sixth grade. I ran for student, president. I was the first girl nominated, selected as president of our student council. So it's kind of always been in me to make the world a better place for girls and women.
Awesome. How's the organization evolved over the years?
Yeah, so I started it in 1996 with 13 kids in Charlotte, and it very quickly caught on. So it tapped into something in the psyche and in the heart, I think, that girls really resonated with, and their families were very excited by the changes they were seeing in their children, or the positive influence it was having on their kids. So those 13 girls told 13 other girls, and then there were 26, and then there were 75. And then I quickly realized that we needed to turn this into a nonprofit business. It wasn't just going to be a hobby. And at that point, I started to bring in people who had skill sets that I didn't have, so that we could be a full, robust program with all of our I's dotted and T's crossed. And then it grew from that till now. It's 200 cities with, like you said, thousands and thousands of schools. And it's served over 2.5 million kids at this point. So it's about 200,000 a year.
Awesome. How has your leadership skills kind of like grown through leading a
Oh,
nonprofit?
how have mine?
Yes.
Yeah. So, one of the things I realized quickly on Mihika was that I'm a visionary. So I like to see big picture, and I'm very good at storytelling and inspiring people and getting them excited about things. But I recognized early on that I wasn't very good with um, um, the small steps. You know what I mean? Like the tiny little details. And I wasn't great with finances or even fundraising. So I think a positive sign in leadership is to identify what you're really good at, and then to bring in people that are good at what you're not good at, so that you can, scale or grow your org to where it can be all that it can be.
Absolutely. How do you think like passion kind of helped you focus on the big picture and it kind of lead you there basically?
Yeah. So being passionate about something is very energizing, right? When you're excited about something or passionate about it, it gives you energy. And I think starting a nonprofit, starting a social enterprise, starting something takes a lot of energy. And while there were times, and I mean, I'll be honest, that I kind of wanted to not give up, but I got tired, but that passion somehow fueled me to keep going. And there were a lot of nights where I was up late or up early trying to get everything ready for the next Girls on the Run season. So yeah, passion is a big plays a big part. Plus, it makes me never feel like I'm working.
Can you share a specific moment or story that kind of reaffirmed your commitment to the cause and again how like passion kind of reaffirmed your commitment?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a couple things. One, I'm the mom to two kids, and my second child is a daughter. And I got to see how the program actually impacted her. So it was like in our house, I mean, she would come back from the program and challenge me in the best of ways. And then another, you know, I mean, just to see young women become fearless in sharing their voices, standing up for themselves, even as young as 8 years old, to speak their truth into a group of girls their age, and for that to be received and honored. So that was something that repeatedly occurred. There's literally thousands of stories where girls have grown into their power. Yeah. And that really is something that fueled me and still fuels me.
Great, great. Reflecting on kind of the impact of Girls on the Run since it's become so widespread across across North America, can you share a success story or a moment that stands out to you where you saw a positive influence on your girl's life? I know you talked about your daughter. Is there any like specific instance?
Oh, absolutely. So I was coaching, we call it coaching. It's really facilitating, but I was coaching a group of girls. And one of the girls at the very beginning was very timid and obviously was was dealing with something emotionally, and she wasn't talking. So I went to the school counselor later that day and said, I just want to make sure that I'm able to provide what this young woman needs. Is there something I need to know? And they said that she had something called selective mutism, which means she could talk, but she just wasn't talking. And they assumed this might have been from an abusive childhood or some trauma that she might have experienced as a child. She was in foster care. She was living with a different family than her family of origin. And it was just pretty remarkable over the course of that 10 weeks to watch this young woman begin to shine from the inside out, stand taller. She became more active. She was participating in the lessons. But the interesting thing was she still wasn't speaking. And on the last day of Girls on the Run, she gave me a card, and I asked her in front of the group, would you like to read this card to me? And she actually read it out loud to the group. And she said, the way I felt at Girls on the Run was loved. Thank you, Molly. And that was a pretty pivotal moment where she felt strong enough and loved enough to share her voice, even though no one at the school had ever heard it. That
Oh,
story will always stay with me.
yes, absolutely. How do you measure the success of your program and what keeps you inspired to continue this work?
Yeah, so we actually have there's a whole system of measures. So we have had researchers, one in particular that got a significant grant from the NIH to do an evaluation that looked at the studied some of the markers before the program, and then right after the girls finished, and then another 6 months, and then another year after. So we actually put a lot of funds into making sure we measure the impact of the program on things like confidence and resiliency and feelings of self-esteem, and even their levels of movement. Are they still active? And then of course, numbers don't lie. So if kids are still wanting to do it and they're having fun and the numbers are at least consistent, if not growing, that's a pretty good sign too, that you're doing something that makes a difference.
Mhm. How did you manage to like kind of expand your organization?
Yeah, that was that was hard. So we got some media attention, let's see, about 2 years in. And that media, this was back before, social media. So there were only a few channels. We weren't competing with 1,000 different apps and things. So Runner's World magazine, which was a popular magazine, did a piece on us, and it took off. We had queries from all over the country, and so we started with 5 additional cities, and then we went to like 15, and then we began to grow rapidly. And that's when I needed to bring in people that understood the business side of things, so that we made sure we grew with quality, and we didn't stray from what our program was about.
Great. How do you think like building a team really impacted your organization?
It was huge. I mean, there is no way this program would not exist if it weren't for the team. And the team, how those players look changes over the years. So at the beginning, they're early adopters. They're people, we don't really have a proven track record. So they have to believe sort of in their heart that this is going to make a difference. So, our first hire was a fund development person, somebody that could help raise money. And then the second hire was like an operations, a person that could manage all the details and all the registrations and all that sort of thing. And then from there, we just grew out. Now we have people that write curriculum and, social media people, and it just has grown to hundreds of people now.
For young girls in Nepal aspiring to become social entrepreneurs like yourself, what advice would you give them in terms of pursuing their passion and breaking barriers?
I think one of the first things I would say is to find an older person, or not even that much older, but someone that you can share your big ideas with that isn't going to go, oh no, that can't happen, or that's not possible. You surround yourself with people that believe in you, and then begin to articulate your dreams, because I've been talking about Girls on the Run for a good year, maybe year and a half before I started it. And so talking about it was sort of like creating a sculpture or a painting. I would say something and then somebody would say, I don't quite understand that. So I'd have to retell it in a way that finally it was understood and it made sense. So that would be one thing for sure. And then, you know, to not give up if the first try doesn't work. So, many people don't know this. I tried probably, I don't know, 8 or 10 things before Girls on the Run. They were all sort of versions of it. But, like each one was a stepping stone toward what eventually turned into Girls on the Run. So if your first big idea doesn't work, don't give up. Just keep going at it, and surround yourself with people that believe in you. Those two things really helped.
What like specific experience kind of sparked your interest in Girls on the Run and building it?
So, I think a lot of it was there were two things happening, and I think they're still happening, is there are women who are changing the world for the better, right? They're just explosive. And I saw those people. They were in my life. My mother was one of them. One of my sisters is one of them. They were just doing this. And yet at the same time, there were forces that were sort of trying to hold them down, you know? And I think what spurred me on was recognizing, for me anyway, the way to counteract those forces is to elevate the people that are doing the great work. Do you know what I mean? I'm not a fighter. Now there's a place for that. There's a place for people to fight against those things that hold people down. But for me, it was about creating this program where girls could be that elevated self, so that eventually the systems that were holding them down, right, would sort of fumble, because a girl who is empowered is not often going to let somebody hold her down. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Were there any specific skills or mindsets that you found like crucial in your journey, as a female social
Yeah,
entrepreneur?
I would say definitely being able to speak in public,
Mhm.
being able to tell the story to, I would be afraid, but I'd still get up there and do it, so being able to, oh my gosh, articulate what our program was about in a way that people understood. Another was to be charming in the best of ways. And I don't mean like fake charming. I mean to really be interested in what people have to say and to listen and create those connections, so that people felt as passionate about the program as I did.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah,
Awesome.
and I'm really all about creating a welcoming or generous space. So, a place of belonging. And that goes for staff as well as the kids in the program.
Mhm. How do you, or like, what is your best tip on like public speaking and leadership skills?
To speak authentically,
Mm.
as hard as that is. And I know the first time I gave my first Girls on the Run speech, I actually read it. I had to. I was nervous. It was on paper. But there were a few times that I cried. I mean, I wasn't, just tearing up. But I think people will react to someone they will believe someone they think is being authentic.
Mhm.
So it was never about trying to impress people or get people to do something. It was just sharing the story and inviting them to get involved. Now, over the years, all I have is like index cards or bullet points, and then I just speak I've spoken enough that I kind of know what I'm going to say.
Nice. In
Mhm.
like the early stages of building your organization, how did you kind of like overcome that like fear of this organization is not going to go anywhere kind of mindset?
That's a great question. I I don't think, well, I'll tell you what. The first season was so successful. There were only 13 girls, but they were so enthusiastic about it. I at that moment I couldn't not go forward, right? They wouldn't let me. Those 13 girls wanted to do the program again. And then they told 13 kids, and then there were like 26, and they wanted to do it again. And it was like I couldn't let them down. But I realized that, yeah, it had tapped into something. Um, and I think a lot of social entrepreneurs would say that, they recognize there's something happening that goes beyond just words. And they're like, I've got to keep going.
Mhm.
You know? Yeah.
What advice would you give for girls trying to find out what their passion is and what they love?
I would notice notice the things that make you angry and notice the things that make you feel joy. And I think there's an intersection there, like space is the space, to dig into.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Perfect. What is your vision for the future of Girls on the Run, and how do you hope your legacy will inspire future generations of female leaders?
Oh my goodness. Well, I don't know that I can hope any more than what it already is. Like it kind of is mind blowing that it's as big as it is. I do hope that eventually some of the systems that are in place that sort of try to limit girls and women's potential begin to fall because we have, millions of girls that are now coming through the program and standing in their own power. And that to me was always the way we would make uh, systemic and cultural change was when you have enough girls that believe in themselves, the things that would suggest they're not good enough or whatever will fall. So that would be my dream, is that eventually every girl would be able to activate her limitless potential.
Awesome. Do you have any plans for extending the organization in like the next couple
I
years?
know that the program, so I don't work in the day-to-day operations anymore. I do know that, eventually one day they'd like to be in other parts of the world besides North America.
Hmm.
I think they're trying to, first of all, kind of saturate this market first before they launch out into any other areas. But I think that's the future, at least. Yeah.
Awesome. How did
Mhm.
you start learning about all these like systemic barriers and gender barriers, and how did it kind of like ignite your passion to
Yeah.
the organization?
So, one, I had a mom that was very verbal about these things, and I watched her sort of come out of her shell in her late 40s when I was, a kid. And then I got a degree in social work. I have a master's in social work, which is a degree that really looks at those systems and oppressive forces. And then I went a track called School of Social, I went into educational social work. So we were looking at youth and how those systems impacted youth. And it was just sort of a perfect segue into Girls on the Run.
Awesome. Do you have any like book recommendations or anything that
Oh
can
my
kind
gosh, you shouldn't
of
have asked me that. So I am a big fan of like um Brene Brown, those sorts of books. I tend to fall on the less leadership, but more on the internalized sort of narratives that we tell ourselves so that we can break out of those boxes. Another author that I absolutely love is a woman named Glennon Doyle. I love her work. But those two are kind of inspire me. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Do you have any last words for um, girls in Nepal who really, really, really wanted to kind of hear your story and background on founding this organization?
I would say one other thing that I would invite you to do is to Journal, I didn't mention that, but I think getting quiet with yourself and just pouring out your thoughts onto a piece of paper without any judgment, just like in the morning or whenever you have some time to yourself, just pour those thoughts out because sometimes the themes will pop out of those pages.
Awesome. Yes, that is all the questions I have. Thank you so much for being a part of this curriculum to empower girls in Nepal. We hope your advice will create a better future for aspiring business leaders around the world.